Hello everyone, my name's Tyler. Welcome to another episode of Fortnite Battle Royale Ideas, the series where you give your ideas for Fortnite and I'll give you my thoughts and implementations on the ideas. Today's video idea is C4 and comes from Michael Saba, who says, "My new idea is C4, or a placed grenade, one that could go off on its own or when you decide to fire it." Darnell Titley adds to this by saying, "Imagine if it was boogie themed and it made your character do a quick dance before exploding and dealing some damage." In a separate comment, Darnell mentions an explosive barrel, an item that fits into the trap slots. You place it on the ground, it has 25 to 50 health, and when it takes enough damage to be destroyed, boom, the biggest explosion in the game, balanced by the fact that you have to get up close and personal to place it. Maybe it triggers multiple explosions so it can knock down a wall, then do damage to anyone behind the wall. I also want to say thank you to everyone that mentioned a landmine or IED type item. Some properties will be similar between those items and the C4 item, but I plan on doing an entirely separate video on landmines, so stay tuned for that. In the background, you're seeing some solo gameplay of me dropping in at Fatal Fields, and while I make plenty of mistakes, like needlessly falling while trying to build up a hill and having to waste my medkit, going back into the storm for a health item that yields less health than what I lost, and the usual potato aim you will always see on this channel, I don't let that stop me from pushing to the end. If you do enjoy the gameplay, give the video a thumbs up. What's the benefit of C4? Well, in my opinion, it would be that you get all of the explosive goodness that you would from a thrown grenade or from a grenade launcher, but at a controlled rate, meaning you determine exactly where and when that explosion happens. If you can make an explosion exactly where and when you want it, one might think that the blast radius or damage would have to be reduced, but I'm thinking quite the contrary. Let's make the explosion massive, or at least bigger than the grenade. I'm sure we've all had instances where we die by a grenade or grenade launcher and it felt unlucky or cheap. If you were simply to up the damage of the C4 while keeping most of the other characteristics the same, C4 would probably feel even more cheap and unlucky. This really all depends on how the C4 is implemented and how you interact with it. And quite frankly, C4 could just be better than grenades, because this is a Battle Royale game, and while balancing needs to be had, there are items that are more rare and just strictly better than others. The rarity alone brings balance to the game. That is one of the beauties of a Battle Royale. But I imagine the grenade won't become obsolete, as the C4 and grenades will serve their own situational purposes. And just because the C4 could have a bigger explosion doesn't even mean that it's better than the grenades. It really depends on its other characteristics. So let's talk about that. The first thing that could be done to the C4 to balance it having such a big explosion is to limit the amount you pick up. When you find grenade, you find 3 at a time. When you find a boogie grenade, you only find 1 at a time. I can't speak for everyone, but the people I play with would take the 3 grenades over the boogie every time. If you were instead to only find 1 grenade at a time and 3 boogies at a time, I'm sure the decision would sway the other way, or at least be a harder decision to make. Regardless of how many C4 you find at a time, I would think they could just stack like any other item in the game. That's a balancing idea, one that I don't like because I would want to find more than 1 C4 pack at a time. I've got some cool uses for multiple C4 packs I'll go over in a minute. I think 2 C4 packs would be a minimum, but I favor 3. Again, it all depends on how easy they are to use, and if it's something that requires a little more time and thinking, bump their drop rate up to 3. If it's a little easier to use, bump them down to 2 or change their rarity. Whether the blast radius is larger, which I prefer, or not, here's how I think C4 should work. C4 is something you plant, meaning that you go up to a wall, the floor, or whatever you're placing it on and plant it. It could be thrown too. If it was thrown, it could be more like a toss. Its maximum height would be 1 story above you, and its lateral distance would be about the same. So it's not going to be something that you can put wherever, at least not without some strategic planning. You won't be able to toss it wherever, whenever, and then cause a big boom. The difference here is that you think ahead, take a second to plant it, walk away, and detonate it. Again, the C4 is something that puts you in a vulnerable state by having to set it up. It takes time to plant it, and it takes thought to carry out when, how, and where you're going to do it, without also blowing yourself up. For these reasons, I think the blast radius needs to be much larger than the standard grenade. The damage can be kept the same, as I don't see this item as being so much to get kills directly, but to blow up an entire section of the side of a building or completely destroy an enemy's base. So let's say the C4 sticks to wherever you place it. I imagine C4 takes up an inventory slot just like a grenade. It also comes with a detonator, the device used to blow up C4. You can place 1 C4 pack onto the wall, you press a button while your other 2 C4 packs are equipped to pull out your detonator. Doing it this way allows you to place only 1 C4 pack at a time to be detonated, or you can choose to place down multiple C4 packs and detonate however many you have placed. Lots of small booms, or 1 big boom. I suppose it could be based on a timer. After you've placed the C4, you'd have somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds before it detonates. I prefer the manual detonation as it gives you much more control. I'm thinking after it's placed, it has a safety feature on it that doesn't allow you to detonate it until 1.5 to 3 seconds after it's placed. Not only does this make it foolproof against yourself, but also it can't be spammed. Throw it through a window and instantly detonate type of thing. Does anyone remember the C4 from Black Ops 2? Yeah, we don't want that. This is something a little bit more strategic. Let's talk about the benefits and situations in which C4 would be useful. I think the most useful and obvious would be taking down enemy bases. Have you ever found yourself or a teammate at the bottom of an enemy's tower and that enemy has no idea that you're there? This would make for a perfect C4 opportunity. Stick a couple packs to the bottom of the base and bring the whole thing down. This scenario would also be good because not only would you bring down the base fast, but sometimes you don't want to shoot at someone's base. Maybe that enemy doesn't know where you're at and neither does anyone else. If you started firing rockets and heavy ammunition towards the enemy's base, well, now everyone in the vicinity knows your location. But C4 would allow you to stick this explosive to the base, run off somewhere else, and while the boom would be noticeable, no one else would know where the detonation button was pressed. I suppose pressing the button could make a quiet beep or click sound. I'd argue against that, but if so, maybe you could hear it one room away. Still being able to cause a huge explosion while no one knows where the person is that caused it would be a huge benefit. Another useful situation is when there's a group of enemies in a medium to large sized building, let's say one of those factories close to Salty, and you want to go in there. You could use a door, but that'd be obvious, and maybe they have traps set up. So instead, you decide to bust through a wall, or better yet, you build on top and pickaxe through the roof. The problem is this doesn't happen in an instance. The enemy is going to pinpoint your location before you're able to break through. With C4, however, you could plant it on the wall or roof and detonate it. Even if the enemy knew where you or the C4 was, when it detonates, it's going to blow up more than just the one wall that your pickaxe would have busted through. They might see where the explosion happens, but instead of knowing exactly where to shoot, there's a much bigger opening for you to fire bullets through or for you to rush in with a shotgun. More options that they won't be able to predict. You could even have a teammate plant a few bricks of C4 on the side of a building while you and the rest of your team get into position 50 meters away. On his mark, after the explosion, your team rains bullets into the building where the enemy thought they were safe, or you could plant C4 on the west side of a building and make your way to the east side. Detonate the C4, more than likely they're going to look that way of the explosion to set up defenses or attack. Meanwhile, you simply walk through the back side, opposite of the explosion, through the door and shoot them from behind. You could even use it for a full-out distraction. The louder this item is, the better for this scenario. Maybe you place a C4 in a couple different spots behind you. You now find yourself in a position where you've remained stealthy this whole time, but you have to move because of the storm or because you want high ground on a close-by hill. Moving there would give away your position, but you whip out your detonator, causing multiple explosions in the areas where you left your C4, and in theory, this would cause a distraction and make those enemies you were trying to move past without being noticed turn the opposite way. Another fantastic use of the C4 would be to pair it with the jump pad. I'm always skeptical about using a jump pad without fully scoping out what's behind me, and sometimes you don't have enough time to do so. So I may use a jump pad, and I may have a group of enemies also use the jump pad that I built, and they're going to use my creation to follow me and end me. But if I had C4, I could place it next to the jump pad, and after I landed, I could detonate it, blowing up any evidence at all of the jump pad. You see videos, and maybe you've tried it yourself, where you try to bait someone into a trap. You could place a gold RPG in the back of a truck and tuck a brick of C4 under it. The enemy may see a ceiling with a spike trap attached to the back of a truck, but they'd be none the wiser about C4 being under the truck. Or maybe you could build a long bridge connecting two hills. To the enemy, it looks safe. It's 2 floors wide and it's made of brick, but little do they know, you're off in the distance, watching them make their way towards the center while the brick of C4 is tucked under the pyramid you built at the beginning and end of the bridge. You blow it up, causing the whole team to fall to their demise. Plenty of awesome and fun uses for the C4. Let me know in the comments below what you think would be the most useful use for C4 and what would be the most entertaining scenario. If the C4 needed to be nerfed, they could add a max distance away that it could be detonated from, or maybe at greater distances it would take a little longer to detonate. To buff the C4, they could add an indicator that would let you know when someone was in proximity of the explosion. I think there should be some sort of trap item that does this. It doesn't have to do damage, but maybe a future video idea, I suppose. I would also think that you, a teammate, or an enemy would be able to shoot the C4 and blow it up. If this were the case, maybe you could place C4 and swap out the detonator to free up space in your inventory. This way you would still be able to make a big boom by shooting at it. Whatever the case, C4 would be a fun addition to the game that would make a bigger, more precise version of the grenade that would make you vulnerable while placing and takes time and thinking ahead to pull off a good play. I think this is an item that would be very rewarding. Let me know what you think of the C4 and what you think of the C4 in the ways that I mentioned. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for Fortnite and all things gaming. This has been Toast, and I'll see you on the next video.